Dave Palumbo here with another RX Muscle supplement and science review. Today I'm going to be talking about the anabolic steroid Deca-Durabolin, aka nandrolone decanoate. And it's probably one of my favorite anabolics that I used back in the day. It's probably one of the first ones I used. Matter of fact, I remember there was a guy who worked in GNC. He was a big bodybuilder guy, and I don't know how we got talking about anabolics. And he had a legitimate prescription back in the 90s. It was at a New Jersey pharmacy, because in New Jersey the anabolic steroids were not controlled substances. And he didn't have a car, and I drove him down there. We picked it up, and that was the first drug I really used ever. It was nandrolone decanoate. I remember I think it was the generic form of it, but it was right from an American pharmacy, and I believe I was using 200 milligrams a week of this stuff. And what I noticed right off the bat, the first thing I can even remember, was that I had tremendous pumps after about 2 to 3 weeks on this stuff, meaning my blood volume increased quite a bit. My joints felt really good. I had a knee that was bothering me, and I don't know why. Every time I would do legs, and I was 100% natural, at this point. And once again, I had done legs, and I was getting rubbing in one of my knees, and I even took, for me, which was crazy, I took 2-3 months off from training legs, and it just didn't go away. And I was, I really, wanted to do a cycle, and I didn't know if I was going to waste it because I wasn't able to train legs. And I started taking the Deca, and within 3 weeks, all the pain in my knee was gone. It was like a miracle. Now, I don't know if it was because the muscle started to grow and support my knee joint better, or the anti-inflammatory effect that I was told that Deca-Durabolin had. It was probably a combination of both. But there's no denying the fact that of all the anabolic steroids on the market, Deca-Durabolin has a very unique anti-inflammatory effect. Now, some people, I've read, I try to read what's going on the internet, when I'm researching something. And I know a lot about Deca. Obviously, it's been around a long time. I've used it, bought it from the pharmacy. I've pretty much purchased it from everywhere. Mexico, Spain. And what a lot of people believe is that, Deca actually increases collagen synthesis in the joints. And I don't think that's the case, because anabolic steroids really don't work on collagen much and connective tissue. They're really specific to muscle. But I believe that Deca has a tremendous anti-inflammatory effect, similar to what cortisol would have on a joint, or when you take a prednisone injection, which is cortisol basically. You get that anti-inflammation effect. And a lot of speculation is that Deca might actually bind to cortisone receptors, or at least have some sort of configuration that's similar to cortisone and can stimulate those receptors, causing anti-inflammation. Whatever the case may be, Deca absolutely makes your joints feel better. It also happens to be a really good anabolic drug. And a lot of people can try to compare it to testosterone, and they say, well, it's more anabolic than testosterone, which is not the case. Testosterone has the highest anabolic rating of any drug. What happens is with Deca is they removed some of the androgenic components, the side effect components, basically the stuff that causes masculinizing side effects in women. They've removed some of the androgenizing effects of Deca, and they've made a more anabolic drug. So when you compare the ratio of the anabolic or muscle building effects to the androgenic effects, it's more anabolic, but not. If you had to quantify how anabolic it really is, it's still less than testosterone. But it is pretty impressive. And when you stack it with testosterone, it works really well. They have a really nice synergism together. For whatever reason, I think personally that the joint relief, combined with the fact that Deca is anabolic, combined with the fact that we know when you put two drugs together called stacking, you get a synergistic effect. They enhance each other more than just 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 5. And you get a really good effect. And a lot of people have done their first cycle of testosterone and Deca and gotten really good gains from it. Because if you can train pain-free and recover better, okay, you're gonna make better gains, obviously. Now, dosages have been debated over the years. Personally, back in the day, 200 milligrams to 400 milligrams per week was the recommended dosage, with 400 seeming to be the sweet spot. Assuming you have fully dosed Deca, which in today's marketplace may or may not be true. Obviously, I guess the prevailing amount of underground steroid labs out there make it a crapshoot at best. Now, the good thing is that, if you've seen any of the Roy test kits that I sell at DavePalumbo.com, you can test Deca to see if it's really Deca, And then you could actually buy another test kit, which is called the semi-quantitative test, and you can tell if the Deca is really dosed properly. It'll actually give you the dose, how much is in there. So that's a really good, tool now that people can use to see if they're using fully dosed Deca. But if you are using fully dosed Deca, 400 milligrams per week works really, really nice, with 500 being probably the sweet spot. A lot of guys today, and I usually recommend the guys use about 600 milligrams a week, only because I think a lot of the stuff is underdosed out there. But 400 really is the sweet spot. And that used to be two vials of the stuff. The American Deca-Durabolin from Organon came in a little vial that was 2 mLs, and each ml was 100 milligrams. So you would get 200 milligrams out of each vial, and we would pop a whole vial usually twice a week, and that seemed to work really well. The anti-inflammation effects, believe it or not, can be you can get benefits from that from taking as little as 50 milligrams a week. So you don't need a lot of Deca to get the anti-inflammation effects, but you need more if you want to get the muscle building effects that come along with it. Now, the more Deca you take, okay, the more, quote, side effects you're going to get. Now, while Deca does not aromatize very easily into estrogen, it does, but I would say it's probably 20% less than testosterone if I had to make a guess. So you do absolutely need to take some kind of an estrogen blocking agent like Arimidex or Femara works well. But Deca can also in high dosages convert to prolactin, or at least induce high prolactin levels. How it does that, I'm not really sure. I don't want to give out false information, but it does increase prolactin levels. And in some people, it increases prolactin a lot more than in other people. And when you have high prolactin levels in your body, what happens? Well, if you experience this, you can have erection problems, maintaining erections, because high prolactin inhibits erections in men. A lot of guys have, they don't have necessarily low sex drive, but they can't finish the act, or they have trouble while they're having sex, maintaining an erection, and that can be mentally, very bad situation, obviously, especially if you have a girlfriend or wife. Now, the other thing that can happen from high prolactin levels is you can get a form of gynecomastia known as prolactin-induced gynecomastia. The glands do get swollen there like they do with estrogen, when they respond to estrogen the same way, but they can actually start secreting a mucus-like secretion. And, whereas that doesn't happen when you have high estrogen. High estrogen and estrogen-induced gynecomastia just makes the gland tissue grow and get bigger, but it doesn't cause any kind of a secretion or, any kind of like discharge out of the gland, whereas the prolactin will. So if you have something that is coming out of the gland, you can probably bet your bottom dollar that it's prolactin-induced versus estrogen-induced. That doesn't mean that you should knee-jerk take a prolactin inhibitor like cabergoline or bromocriptine just because you're taking Deca, because, unless you're having serious side effects from it, that's not something you want to just throw in there knee-jerk response. I know a lot of guys that will go for blood work to check their estrogen, their testosterone levels and their prolactin levels to see if there is an issue. If you're one of these people that looks at a vial of Deca and you can't get an erection, I would just avoid the drug completely, okay? Because that means you're really sensitive to the stuff. But, when I used 400 milligrams a week, I never had any problems whatsoever. And while I never really had my prolactin levels checked, because that's not something that we did back then, I have a feeling they weren't high. Because if they would have been high, I would have had some discharge. I would have had, the erection issues, and that wasn't the case. I got very good results from Deca. And so if you can handle that drug, it's an excellent drug. It's clean. It's long-acting because it's that nandrolone, that decanoate ester that it's linked to is a very long-acting ester, which means it releases slowly and steadily into the bloodstream. Matter of fact, if you took a shot today, in 3 weeks, you'd still probably have some functional Deca in your system that would be doing something. Deca also does very long metabolites. Now, the metabolites don't mean the drug is still working, but it means that it can be detected in your bloodstream for sometimes up to 18 months. So if you're getting drug tested, it's probably not a good drug to use. A lot of people ask me about the shorter acting or the faster acting version of Deca, known as Deca, or just is known as Durabolin or nandrolone phenylpropionate, which is a faster acting ester of Deca. The problem with that is it's a pretty good drug. I prefer the long acting one, but it doesn't have the anti-inflammatory effects that Deca-Durabolin does. It's just not. Some people say it has a little bit, but I never noticed any anti-inflammation effects from it. So if you're looking for that, the benefits of Deca, you're not going to get it from the nandrolone version of it, or the nandrolone phenylpropionate version, I should say, of it. And that's something to consider. Also, a lot of people think, well, the fast-acting version is something that women can take and not get side effects, and that's not true either. Deca and the Durabolin form of it which is the fast-acting, both have side effects that women would not want to endure, okay? You're going to get voice deepening, you're going to get hair growth on the face, and it, once again, because Deca is a slower-acting drug, you might not notice it right at first, but it's going to happen. It's a cumulative effect, so that's not something that women really should consider taking, and I think that's important for me to put that out there because I do know a lot of women that do take it. They like the way they feel on it because they grow, and obviously they have good joint relief, but I'm telling you, long-term, it's going to cause a lot of side effects. And a lot of women have gotten side effects from taking Deca. So it's really a male drug to put into your regimen. Now, the question is, a lot of people use it off-season to put on mass, but can it be used pre-contest? And I say yes. Now, I don't use it like the last 6 to 8 weeks before a show, but I do use it in the first part of the contest diet because I think, as you start reducing carbohydrate intake and your body's not holding as much fluid, a lot of times the joints become vulnerable because the muscles are glycogen depleted. And Deca is perfect during that time period because it will actually help. It'll make the joints feel like they're more lubricated because of that anti-inflammation effect that Deca has. So it's a nice drug to start out the first 6 to 8 weeks of your contest prep with because you're going to feel better and you're going to be strong. You're not going to lose as much strength and the joints will feel better. Obviously, once you get into that last 6 to 8 weeks, it doesn't even matter anymore because now you're in the home stretch. So I like to use it pre-contest. I also like to use it off-season. I like to cycle it every 8 weeks. I feel like sometimes if you use it for too long of a period of time, it loses some of its effectiveness as an anabolic agent. But if you're looking for just anti-inflammation effects from it, you're pretty safe to keep doing it all the time. I mean, I remember when I tore my quad and I was trying to recover from that. At the time I was on hormone replacement. I was on 200 milligrams of testosterone cypionate a week. And I actually went down to 100 milligrams and I went on 100 milligrams of Deca with it just for the anti-inflammation effect of it. And it worked pretty effectively. I did that for 8 weeks of my, every time I had the quad surgery, and it seemed to really help quite a bit. So that's something that you might want to consider if you're rehabbing something as well. So all in all, if you look at Deca overall, I think it's one of the best anabolic steroids out there. It's one of the safest because it is long-acting. It doesn't have any liver toxicity whatsoever. It's like a long-acting testosterone in that effect. And as long as you're not really sensitive and it doesn't raise your prolactin levels too high, where you're going to be getting erection issues or you're going to be getting, gynecomastia from it, I think it's a drug that you can reliably use and get excellent results from. It also has a really good way of it's kind of like EQ in the sense that it definitely pumps up your red blood cell count, which I think is a good thing. A lot of people get scared when they see high red blood cell count and they're ready to go give blood at the drop of a dime. If your hemoglobin and hematocrit and red blood cell count are not through the roof, it's good to have higher levels because, think about the cyclists and all the athletes, the endurance athletes. They want high red blood cell count. Why? Because they get better oxygen carrying capacity to the muscles and they can train harder. So slightly high red blood cell count, I've talked about this in other videos, is not necessarily a bad thing unless you have a clotting issue, genetically speaking, and or your levels are just through the roof. But I wouldn't be donating blood just because you're getting a little boost in red blood cell and hemoglobin hematocrit just because you're on a cycle. Take advantage of that and train harder. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed today's little overview of Deca-Durabolin, aka Nandrolone decanoate. If you guys have any suggestions, put them in the comments below, and I'll do my next drug profile for the next edition of RX Muscle Supplement and Science. For now, I'm Dave Palumbo. I'll see you next time.